I've just finished reading Karen Kilby's Perichoresis and Projection, which I read after reading Jürgen Moltmann. I think Kilby really does take apart social Trinitarianism, or at least those versions of social Trinitarianism that unify God in terms of perichoresis, and then make that perichoresis a kind of structure whereby we live in community. The common error, though, that I see critics of social Trinitarianism falling into, though, is that the idea that social Trinitarians are committed to perichoresis as the binding principle of the three persons. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think minimally, social Trinitarianism begins with the threeness and works towards the oneness. Because there are definitely a number of models that begin with the threeness and work towards the oneness that don't unify those three persons in virtue of perichoresis. It's interesting that Kilby kind of provides an alternative, not one in terms of analogy, but she talks about how the Trinity is useful in as much as it provides a grammar whereby we can structure what we believe as Christians about Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's kind of fundamental but secondary. It makes sense of the things Christians affirm rather than offering any particular insight into God himself, which is interesting. But I think the most important part of Kilby's paper is that criticism that those social Trinitarians that use perichoresis as a way for unifying the Trinity and projecting that onto social life is mistaken, and I think that's spot on. So that's what I've got from that article. Now that I've read a number of overviews and read at least one primary text, the text I think I'm doing the review of, and a number of stuff in between, I think I've got a broad overview of what has taken place in Trinitarian theology over the last 30 years. We've seen a revival of Trinitarian theology, the influx of social models, a response to that enthusiastic, rhetorical kind of social Trinitarianism, criticisms, the focusing of issues of debate, and finally a kind of more modest, cautious, yet more informed approach to Trinitarian theology. It's very interesting to see the developments. So there I have it. Next, I think I'm just going to look at a number of other articles, then try and summarise all my thoughts on a piece of paper or something. Perhaps use some of those models and diagrams from Advancing Trinitarian Theology to helpfully organise where all these things fit. So there we are. In terms of research, yeah, I started off by trying to get overviews, delve straight into some rather deep overviews that assume that I had knowledge of the subject matter, which I did. So looked at some of those overviews, looked at some articles that summarise the state of the debate, acknowledged the various primary texts, looked at where the issues are now in comparison to where they were 30 years ago. So I've got a good grasp of the changes that have taken place, and that is all for now. I don't know where I'm going to go next. Perhaps just read a few more articles and then I'll be ready to start putting together an essay outline of some of the stuff that I've discovered in my research. One thing, actually, for the purpose of research that it would be worth noting for future research, is keeping track of what I have read when. I mean, in these video logs, I've kept track of what I've been reading, which has been helpful. I'm going to have to go back through them and title them all so that I can kind of track what I did. I mean, my notes here provide me with some tracking of the kind of stuff I was reading to start off with, but it would be worth keeping track of what I've read. Again, my computer notes list the books I've gone through in order rather than like in topical kind of categories. So that'd be worth doing. And again, in my essay, it'd probably be worth noting what comes before Moltmann, how Moltmann is a product of that, and the effect that Moltmann has had on the rest of Trinitarian theology over the last 30 years, and where Moltmann sits now, and social doctrines sit now in light of everything that's taken place.